Hello and welcome back. So I had a very interesting week. I tried to record a video a couple days ago and I was going to discuss ego. And so I did all the things I normally do. I got in the zone, I said my prayer, I did some meditation, I invoked my guides, all the things. And when I sat down to do it for 30 minutes straight, I just couldn't get past the first couple of sentences. In another video, I'll explain the process of channeling and kind of my take on channeling and how I approach these videos. But in general, you don't ever want to force it. If you're processing it, if you're judging it, if you're too much in your mind, you kind of it doesn't work. So I gave up and I went to see one of my friends. And we were discussing the fear of being evil and the fear of what if you have negative influence or things that are dictating how you behave in the world, and you're kind of not making decisions on your own. And that just triggered deep-seated fears that I have about being a spiritual teacher and hurting people and abusing power and all these things that I think all spiritual teachers experience if they're really serious about serving people. There are spiritual teachers who can just show up and just do what they're called to do, and they just kind of trust the process so deeply. I'm still on my journey, and so I'm not there. And I definitely want to make sure that I'm in integrity when I do this work, and I can be a little perfectionist about it. And so afterwards, one of my friends said, "This reminds me of Padre Pio." So we ended up watching 2 documentaries on Padre Pio. And it was exactly what I needed to see. Now, I'm not saying I'm like Padre Pio. I just think he led a very interesting life. He was a genuine mystic. And what I left with the most was a deep sense of humility. And looking at people who truly devoted not just 1 hour or 2 hours once a week to make a video, this kind of thing. These are people who devoted their whole lives, lived in monasteries or convents or this kind of thing. And they spent as many of their waking moments engrossed in their religious practice. Now, I don't think religion makes you mystic. I think religion is often a crucial part and very useful on the path to mysticism. But it is not mandatory at all. And there are many people who do the religious path and never end up on mysticism. So I'm not saying that this is somehow related. I'm just saying that's what he chose to do. The conviction with which he showed up to live his life in that way, I deeply, deeply admired. And then I thought, well, isn't this just the perfect lesson that I needed to learn? I tried to make a video about ego, and because my ego was activated in it, the video didn't come through. And then I saw someone who really was working on that themselves, and I realized, oh, I'm like, it's like holding a candle to the sun, you know? Now, I'm not sure if that's even true, but that's how I felt after watching the videos. And it made me realize that the spiritual path is deeply a perfectionism path. It's just that the goal is so far out, that in order to possibly stay sane in the process, you have to learn to accept and make mistakes along the way. And it's, people talk about spiritual ego. I think spiritual perfectionism is horrible because you're worried about, most people in society, we're worried about doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, hurting people. Once you start adding the subjective world, the inner world, now you're worried about feeling the wrong thing and thinking the wrong thing. And when you then add layers of morality or ethics or good versus evil or light and dark and whatever duality consciousness we want to put here, it gets really, really bad. And what I realized is it keeps people from doing their work a lot because they're waiting to be perfect. And the last video I made was about letting the work purify you through the process and trusting that process. And so now let's talk about humility and ego. So humility is necessary, not in a false way, the type of way that we're used to using that term in society, where you know that you're good, but you pretend that you're not so that you can play this dance of, oh no, I'm not full of myself. No, please, say it one more time, like this kind of thing. I can't stand that. I think it's lying. Simply put, I think that type of false humility is lying. I think it's much better for society and for your own being to admit what you know you're good at, and therefore also knowing what you're bad at and knowing where you stand. And that's where the humility comes. That, praise yourself and celebrate your achievements. Know what you're good at, but by extension, also realize where you have to grow. And it's those places where you don't think you have to grow that creates blind spots. It creates places that, where truth is not informing your practice. And so I am going to keep this really short. I will talk about ego itself and how it functions, at least in my worldview, next. And I'll also share about how channeling works from another video. But one of the reasons I wanted to make these videos, actually the reason I rebranded the channel as Autobiography for a Mystic, is because it's in honor of the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahamsa Yogananda. And it's an amazing book. But it's not like, I remember reading it and I realized it just wasn't hitting the spot for me. Actually, I said it was amazing. It was a good book. It just didn't light me up. And when I did some introspection as to why it didn't light me up, I realized even in the style that he wrote, there's this kind of perfectionist, I don't think he's trying to be arrogant or superior, but there's this kind of polish to both his language and his life. Most of the stories are about these amazing accomplishments that people did. I think a lot of people resonate with that book because it shows what's possible. And there are some lessons and some journey and some growth that's in it. And I maybe should reread the book, honestly. But what I found is that I couldn't connect to it because it just made me feel like I had to have already lived 1,000 lifetimes and purified myself to the point where now I have all the skills, spiritual skills and spiritual knowledge, and then I can start doing this work. And for someone like me, that was really demoralizing. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it was what it was. And so this channel, I'm hoping to show you more of the process. I have no shame in saying that I am a mystic, and that is what I care about being. I don't, more than any other title, any other role, that's what I want to do in this lifetime. And so that is my goal, and that is my primary attachment in some ways. But if I keep waiting for the perfection to start, I just won't do anything. And I think it's cool to hear, at least when I think back of when I was like 13 and 14 and really getting into this stuff. If I had a video of someone being like, hey, I'm here now, but I wasn't always here. And here's that whole journey. That would have done so much for me, because there's the self-imposed perfectionism that you get when you're just reading these perfected texts, especially the Sanskrit texts. They don't hold back. I mean, anything's possible. And so the world that you understand becomes huge, and you just feel so small. And it takes a certain time of bravery to actually go on the path. So I want to make these videos to show the path, that I have no clue what ramification there is here, what the karma is. I don't really care. I feel guided to share the journey. In fact, Spirit told me to share the journey. And I find myself trying to go back and sanitize and make it sound good and eloquent. But my commitment, for example, to not edit is that just be purified to the process. And you will grow as this grows. The channel will grow. I will connect to more students. I will connect to more people. I will understand the work better. I'll be able to channel better. But it really has to come from this place of authenticity. And if you suck, you suck. And that's okay. Start there, I think that's where the humility is. The humility is that I'm not going to say that I don't have strengths and, I haven't done the work that I've done. But the humility of knowing, there's a lot more to do. And because I'm able to actually I've chosen my goal to be something that I actually want, that I'm willing to accomplish, not even across one lifetime, but multiple lifetimes. It's a real test of your resolve. And I think that's a much better place to be. This curiosity about what would be possible if I went on this journey. I said I would end earlier, and of course I don't. But anyway, many blessings. I hope everyone has a great week, and I will speak to you soon. Take care.